start of winter may seem like a little bit of a weird time to start a pretty regular maintenance overhaul on a vintage BMW, but when you work at the speed I do, I'd say it's pretty much the perfect time to ensure that it's ready to put a diabolical amount of mileage on it come springtime. Ever since this car got painted, none of the maintenance was done. It's basically just been sitting. As you can see, there's a ton of red dust in the engine bay, which is just leftover material from the auto body shop. No concerns there. So in this video, we're going to cover a ton of the maintenance, engine, transmission, diff, and at the same time, we're going to take the opportunity with the engine being a little bit apart to do some moderate restoration and detailing to clean this car up and really get it ready to look its best come spring. While the oil drains out of this engine, I'm going to take the opportunity to share with you guys why maintenance on this car is so simple. It's not because it's a vintage BMW and it's engineered to perfection. It's because FCP Euro offers a ton of different maintenance kits that make projects like this extremely simple. For this car, I got an engine oil change kit, an Autotrans fluid change kit, and a diff fluid change kit. 3 kits, 3 points at checkout. If I was to get these parts individually, I'm probably looking at 15 to 20 different part numbers. Whereas this way, I'm not missing anything. If I had to do it on my own, there's a good chance I'm gonna miss one tiny little part number, which is not only inconvenient, it can oftentimes hang up the project for days, sometimes weeks, depending on how long it takes to get to you. FCP Euro pretty much eliminates this entirely and makes things a lot easier. You go onto their site, put in your year, make, model, engine, trans, and everything available for your car is gonna come up. And without you having to rely on people in forums saying something might fit, something might not, everything that they have on your model is going to work on your car, which just gives you peace of mind and makes things a whole lot easier. This is where this project becomes just a little bit more intricate, a little bit more complicated. We could have put the oil back in, threw in the filter, and been good to go for many, many, many miles ahead, but in classic chromatic fashion, we wanted to mess with things just a little bit more, make our lives just a little bit harder. This did all work out in the end, but at this point in the video, we don't know that. So if you don't know what you're looking at, this is an M60 V8 engine. What it is 2 M42s welded together in the middle to take the best BMW engine and double it, creating double the performance and double the problems, meaning this thing leaks profusely. These valve covers leak everywhere. I don't know if the person that replaced them originally just didn't seat them properly, but they don't really sit that well. So in this video, we're also going to change the valve cover gaskets, and in the process of that, these valve covers are magnesium and the finish on them failed, I'm assuming the day it left the factory. It looks gross and we need to change it. So we're taking them off, we're going to get them repowder coated gloss OEM silver, and in the meantime, when those come back, we can put the new filters in and hopefully the leaking is done, at least for a season. A season would be great. 2's pushing it, but 1 would be fantastic. Both the valve covers came off pretty successfully. Passenger side was a little bit harder. It's a little bit tighter with the actual engine harness coming in, but nonetheless, they are off and they're gonna get sent out to powder coat. While they're there, we're gonna touch up the plastic engine covers. A bunch of the silver paint on the highlighted areas where the lines in the BMW logos are is failing and falling off. So we're gonna redo that as well as some of the other silver paint and then coat them so they'll be primed and looking great for when the valve covers come back. We'll get this together and throw in our fresh engine oil and then move this car over to the lift. Painting the raised areas of these beauty covers ended up being a lot more complicated than I think it needed to be. Tried to think of every idea that existed, didn't really come up with a good one. If they were metal, it would have been super simple. Powder coat one color, powder coat a second color, wipe off the highlighted areas, bake them, and they're done, permanently done at that rate. They'd be good for a very long time. This is literally just paint on top of plastic, and how long it's gonna last, I'm not exactly sure. But what I ended up doing is referencing a video I saw online. Someone used spray paint on a roll of painter's tape and then rolled that tape over the highlighted area. They did it on a little speaker, I believe, with a tiny little raised BMW logo, and it did work for that. You can also use a paint pen in this scenario, but for me, because there's so many lines and it's quite wide, I needed something bigger, so I chose a roller, just a regular paint roller. In hindsight, if this was more stiff, it probably wouldn't have got as much overspray or overroll between the lines, or if I taped them off properly, but this is how it ended up working out for me. A ton of paint between the highlighted areas, but what I did after was go in with acetone and it came off like nothing. Acetone reacts extremely easy, especially on surfaces like plastic. So it did take a little bit to clean them up later in the video, but at the end, I think it turned out probably somewhere in the realm of 90 to 95% of what I wanted it to look like. And because it's an old car, I'm happy enough with that. All our dirty hardware is over there in the parts cleaner cleaning. We got everything set up on the Viper tool cart. We have our oil and oil filter from FCP Euro, and we finally got our valve covers back from Powder Coat. They're done in gloss silver, and I'd say they turned out pretty dang fantastic, considering they are magnesium, which is probably one of the harder finishes to get a good powder coating finish on. Now, the OEM ones we took off were kind of a weird gold, bronzy color. It was all peeling, flaking, and disgusting. That's basically just because they're magnesium and it caused the finish to prematurely discolor and fail. This is what they should look like, and I want them to stay this way for as long as possible. Of course, with any car part, when you refinish it, as soon as it goes back on the car and you start driving, that part, that finish is basically on its way to failure once again. But there's things we can do to keep it looking as good as long as possible, and that's what I'm hoping to do with these. Under this stuff, we have the valve cover gaskets, new ones from FCP Euro as well, 8 Bosch spark plugs, the engine valve cover grommets, which also do a really good job, especially on these M60 engines, at sealing the oil in. Then on the bottom here, the beauty cover gaskets, the insulation for the main beauty cover on the center, oil cap, and then a couple of different plugs here and there to finish everything off. Once that hardware is done, we're gonna take it out of the parts cleaner, get all this stuff in the car, and kind of piece it back together before we put on some ceramic coating to the whole engine bay and get it looking perfect. One thing that's basically impossible to portray on camera is just how long it takes to actually get that valve cover and install it on the car, especially with it being 2 of them. Having the gasket seated correctly is pretty much everything with this job. If you don't do it, it was basically a waste of time. So I spent a ton of time off camera making sure it was seated correctly. On each side, passenger and driver, there's these 2 half moons at the back. That area is very critical to make sure it's sitting perfectly so that no leaks happen. Eventually, of course, it's gonna leak again, it's gonna start drying out, but maybe it's not in my lifetime, or maybe it's just so far down the road that I don't even care. However, at this point, there's gonna be no leaks and we are gonna be good to go. we've got 7.5 liters of that 5W40 goodness in the M60. Before we put the beauty covers back on, I just want to start the engine, let it idle, and make sure there isn't oil shooting out of anywhere that it shouldn't be, which is everywhere. But before we take it off jack stands, I'm going to spray some Coach Chemie Motorplast all over the engine bay. It's going to nourish the plastics, not just making them look better, but prolonging the life of them, preventing them from drying out, causing any leaks. This stuff is more than just a dressing. It's really healthy for the engine bays, and it has a really nice natural look. I am going to ceramic coat the beauty covers, but for the rest of the plastics, the blacks and everything in this engine bay, Coach Chemie Motorplast. And then once it's on the ground, I'm just going to take a towel and level some of the areas out where it's sitting, but beyond that, it's just going to sit there, soak in, and it'll be good. I was gonna put the beauty covers on the engine before the trans and the diff fluids were done, but they need a little bit more time to cure because I need to run acetone through the grooves to remove any excess paint. So I'm gonna give it till tomorrow. So now get it up into the trans and diff oil first. Getting the new gasket on the Autotrans, super simple, no complications. Filling it up is what I found a little bit interesting. So basically, put the Autotrans fluid in whatever reservoir you have to get it vertically into the tank. Fill it until it starts dripping out in a solid stream. At that point, you need to turn the car on and let it run. I forget the exact temperature, but if you get the car up to running temp, that should typically be good. This takes usually about 15 minutes. Once it's there, pull out the fill plug once again and start pumping fluid in till it starts to leak out once again. It's going to be different per transmission and per car. Some people, I've heard it taking about 6 quarts, some up to 8.5. It's going to vary, so this is not like there's an exact measurement. It's really hard to tell because once the car is on, it starts sucking that Autotrans fluid up into it, and you just need it to be full to the point that it's leaking out again, which is what I did. In this case, it took me about 7.5 quarts. It was good to go. Put the fill plug back in and moved on to the rear diff. With that diff fluid fill plug back in, that concludes all the oils or fluids that we were going to change in this video. Engine oil done, Autotrans fluid done, diff fluid done, and that's a really big first step in this winter or fall maintenance project that I was talking about earlier in the video. I want to get all the maintenance for this car done in December so that when spring rolls around this time, it's just turnkey, ready to go, ready to drive, nothing more, nothing less. I just want to drive it. There's a few other little things that need to get done, like the brake fluid needs to be changed, but I'm going to do that during a big brake upgrade. It's a retrofit kit, and I think it's pretty cool, and it entails quite a bit of work to get it ready, so I'm going to do a full video on that. Coolant, I'm going to change that out when I do the Red 46 Motorsport skid plate for the car, which will be releasing very soon. V8 model and 24 valve model, E34, both options. And then the power steering fluid, wasn't going to do it, but since everything else is done, might as well, so it's a fresh car front to back. In addition to that, giant hole in the exhaust that happened sometime around the last time I was driving this vehicle, but it's gross and it needs to get changed. So from the cat's back, I need to figure out a system. If you guys have any suggestions, I know there isn't much for this car, but I'm sure we can figure out something, even if it's custom welded. And then now I'm going to put the car back on the ground, head over to the bench, take the tape off the beauty covers, use some acetone to pick up any spare paint that definitely got on the black sections. Once that's off, coat them, put them in the engine bay, and I'll show you guys the final look of this car, and we should be good. All in all, it took a lot of work to get here, but the car is sounding better than it ever has before, and the engine bay looks better than I think it ever has before. In fact, I'd say it's on the verge of factory fresh. It looks pretty dang good in there, and I'm pretty proud of the way it came out. Thank you again to FCP Euro for having everything we need to make sure these cars are in tip-top shape. There's a few clips and things missing in the engine bay, which I made a list of, which I'll be ordering from FCP just after this video gets posted. Once it's up, we'll start collecting the parts for the brakes, switch out the brake fluid, and really get this thing ready for spring so we can finally, after so long, have one complete car.